In this edition of Radio KD8TTE, we're going to take a look at mistakes that commonly take place during message relay. Stick around. In amateur radio, we often hear the phrase, when all else fails, we can get the message through. We are in the process of training right now in the Ohio section of the American Radio Relay League to see just how well we are able to do that with our County Information Report project. One of the things that we're able to do with this project is to see the messages that we send at various levels of the area's organization, and we are able to confirm how well we are messaging by looking at the amount of time that it takes for a message to get from one place to another, as well as how accurate the message makes it. Our objective with the long-haul circuits in the national traffic system and the related traffic relay nets is to make sure that when we send a message, it will arrive at its destination word for word, letter for letter. Absolutely no change in the middle. Turning our attention to the message that I sent, we can see my radiogram as it sat on my station. It's unremarkable, it's been completed, and we can see down in the bottom left the sent box has been completed. So we have the accounting for this message. It shows the station to whom I relayed it, the net on which I relayed it, and the date-time group of the relay. Now let's take a look at the message as it sits on the station that accepted this message. When we first look at it, the first thing that I noticed is that down in the bottom we do not have the accounting completed, so we don't know how this message got to be on this station. So that's the first thing that I noticed, and of course we'll want to make sure that we are accounting for these messages properly and we are completing those bits as needed. The next thing that I notice is that we do have information in the preamble is complete. We can see that there is a number there. The number is the same as what I have, and the station of origin is correct. So the combination of station of origin and the message number will allow us to confirm that we are talking about the same message should we need to trace this back. Turning our attention to the precedence, I note that we have RT recorded as the precedence. Now, when we are sending messages, we have several different levels of precedence that we can put that allows us to make sure that we take care of the most urgent, the most important traffic first. We have, of course, emergency, as we talked about earlier, which is always spelled out. We have priority, which is voiced as priority, but is generally written as the abbreviation P in any kind of radio telegraphy, and also that tends to be reflected on the radiogram forms where we're saving the information. There is, of course, welfare, again voiced as welfare, but written as W on the radiogram forms and in radio telegraphy. Routine is our base precedence. That's what we have if we don't have anything else that is telling it to get higher precedence. And that routine is voiced as routine and is written as R in most cases on the forms. In this case, we have RT, and I can figure out that that does mean routine, but it isn't technically correct. Now, some software will actually spell out the precedence rather than just to use the abbreviation. And in fact, the software that I used for the presentation of my copy of the radiogram does, in fact, spell it out. So it isn't wrong for it to be spelled out. It should be abbreviated, and it certainly is abbreviated in radio telegraphy, with the exception of emergency. In any case, RT is something that I can figure out, but it's not correct. So when recording traffic, make sure that you use the abbreviation correctly. Now, things go a little bit sideways once we turn our attention to handling instructions. Handling instructions are how we tell the operators who are actually handling the message at each point along the path of relay and into the delivery phase how they should handle that message. If we take a look at my original, we can see that I have given two sets of handling instructions. Handling instructions Bravo, which means to deliver the message within a certain number of hours, in this case 48, and we also have handling instructions Charlie. That tells the delivering station to send a message back to me indicating the date and time that the message was delivered. Looking at what we have on the receiving end, we have handling instructions Bravo, but it's turned into 4A. So rather than having 48 hours to make a delivery, we now have 4 hours to make a delivery. And we also now have A. In fact, alpha is a legitimate handling instruction. And what it means is that the receiving person, the addressee, the person in the to, has authorized the use of a collect phone call. So if you have to make a long-distance phone call, then they have authorized you to make that call, and they will pay whatever charges are part of that phone call. Now, in the case of handling instructions A alpha, there is often a number that follows it, which will indicate the number of miles that we can make that call. But with no number after the alpha, that means it can be for any distance. So as this message is written, we're saying that the addressee will accept a collect phone call from anywhere in the world. That's not what we put in the original, and it is not really what we meant. And it also is interesting to note that we have no additional handling instruction. Handling instruction Charlie, that's just gone, so I'm not going to get notice that this message actually got delivered just based on the handling instructions here. So handling instructions is very important. We need to make sure that we do get those correct. When we are voicing these, it's my advice to use handling instructions and use the speaking alphabet. So when we say handling instructions Bravo 48, it's very clear that it's not Bravo 4 Alpha. It should sound very different. So again, handling instructions Bravo 48, handling instructions Charlie. That's the way I voiced it, and that's how we should have written that on the receiving end. Next up, we have check. Check in a radiogram refers to the number of groups or words in the text. Looking at my original radiogram, we see that I have 23, that's voiced 2, 3 groups in my radiogram. In this copy, however, we have a record of 3 groups. So that is an important thing for us to notice because it helps us to understand when we have a complete message, if we're missing anything or if we've added anything, which of course can happen in the process of relay. So let's take a look at that check. We've got 33. Now in this radiogram form, it's written in the traditional way where we have 5 groups per line. That gives us the ability to look very quickly. 1, 2, 3 complete lines. That's 15 groups. 4 groups in the last line gives us 19. But we've got 33 in the check. We're missing an awful lot of stuff here. So the way that this would be handled is that the receiving station, upon seeing that the check does not match the number of groups in the text, rather than saying Roger, the station will answer the check does not match, or might say I have a check of, or if it might not be right, like 33, and when the message is that much shorter, the station might ask for the check to be repeated, and you would use the pro word, say again, for that. So the message is transmitted, the sending station sends end, and now the sending station is finished. The receiving station has a chance to talk. The receiving station might say again in preamble, check, or say again, check. In that case, the sending station would say what the check is again, 2-3. Maybe they can hear that better the second time. When we're sending these messages, especially on HF, conditions are sometimes noisy. We have static crashes from lightning activity that can be anywhere near us, and not anywhere near that it creates any kind of safety danger for us, but it can interfere with our signals. In fact, that's what was happening on the evening that we transmitted this message. In any case, the receiving station sees the check does not match and will ask for the check, might say confirm check 3-3, in which case the sending station would say negative check 2-3, in which case the correction can be made. So, that's an important thing for us to make sure that we do get that check correct before we move on and say Roger and accept responsibility for the radiogram. Moving on to the next, we take a look at the place of origin. Bexley, Ohio is correct. Bexley, however, is misspelled here. So this is a case where if the receiving station is unsure about the spelling, then you can ask for the spelling. And you can simply say, ask for spell Bexley. That would be a way to have the sending station spell it out, which would be done with the pro word I spell. If the sending station has reason to suspect that the receiving station might not get it right, for example, it's a person's name, or it's an unusual word, something along those lines, or it's something that can be written several ways. For example, the word there, or there, or there. You might need to spell it to indicate which one you mean. Time filed is correct. We have the time. We also include the time zone indicator. This is Zulu time. That is recorded correctly. The date is also recorded correctly. However, as it's written on this form, the month is actually spelled out. That is not standard practice on the radiogram forms. We use the 3-letter month abbreviation. So again, this is not wrong, but it is non-standard in the way that it's recorded. My advice is always to use the standard means of recording because you want to eliminate the potential for confusion anywhere, and you don't want to have people see, oh, I'm supposed to write out the whole month name, and, for July it's not a big deal, but if we're talking about October, that box is going to be awfully small. Just stick with the 3-letter abbreviation. It is unambiguous, and it will make sure we get the job done. Now, things go a little bit squirrely once we get into the addressee. If you take a look at my radiogram, I have addressed this to the District Emergency Coordinator for Aries District 5. And I used a lot of abbreviations here, and then I included the call sign of the District Emergency Coordinator. The way that I would voice this is to say initials, Delta, Echo, Charlie, initials, Alpha, Romeo, Echo, Sierra, mixed figures, Delta, Fife, amateur call, Kilo, Charlie, 8, Sierra, Yankee, Foxtrot. The receiving station is not going to have a lot of questions about how to write this. When I say initials, Delta, Echo, Charlie, the pro word initials means you're going to write down each letter as I'm giving it to you. I'm giving you the letters in the standard speaking alphabet, so we're not going to do any of this stuff where we're using sugar for S or Zanzibar for Z. We are going to eliminate confusion wherever it has a chance to pop up. Same thing for Aries. Different people pronounce that different ways, and we don't want to have any confusion, so I'm just going to treat it as a group of initials. Mixed figures. That's going to mean that we have both letters and figures as part of this group, and so that's why I use that pro word to introduce D5, which is how I indicate District 5. And then amateur call, of course, that pro word is going to make sure that the receiver knows that this is an amateur call sign, and that will help to make sure that we get it right. If we had too many characters in there, for example, that would be the kind of thing that the receiving station could understand there's a problem and ask for clarification before accepting the traffic. After I've completed my transmission of the information about the addressee, that would be potentially a name, an address. It could be a phone number, an email address. It could be an op note. That would be a note to the operator that might give some specific information like do not call before 3 p.m., or that the message should be routed to a particular traffic net, or that the addressee can be have messages delivered to a particular place. Whatever it is that we need to tell that final operator can go in there. In any case, once I have finished with that and I am ready to move on to the text of the message, I'm going to use the pro word break. So in this transmission, I'm going to have amateur call, Kilo Charlie 8 Sierra Yankee Foxtrot, break. Initials, Charlie, India, Romeo. Initials, Alpha, Romeo, Echo, Sierra. Mixed figures, Delta, Fife. And then I'm going to keep going in my transmission of the text. Let's take a look at the receiving radiogram. In this case, it got garbled. And it got garbled pretty bad. So DEC Aries D5 KC8SYF somehow turned into D5AC KC8SYF. So we've got, it looks like things are out of order because the amateur call sign followed D5 directly in the case of my original. And AC was probably mishearing DEC. Again, I would have spelled that out, though, so that would be Delta Echo Charlie, somehow got turned into Alpha Charlie. Once again, we're on HF. It's noisy. There can be problems sometimes getting through there, so that's a case where if you're not sure, it's not going to hurt the feelings of the sending station to ask for a retransmission. Say again is a perfectly legitimate thing to do. Our job is to get the message right. The other thing here is that apparently the receiving station lost or did not recognize when I said break, and then had those first 3 words that are supposed to be part of the text somehow made it up into the address. So in that case, we have our text now beginning with objective 4. That said, those first 3 groups that we have now as part of the address do match, and the rest of the text is correct as we get it in sync, up to the point of our X-ray. Now again, X-ray in a radiogram is how we indicate a break in thought, a change from one topic to the other, something that a full stop would achieve. That would be sent by saying initial X-ray. Use of the pro word initial again tells the receiving station to write down the letter that's going to be sent, and what should have happened there is by writing just the letter X. In any case, from there on, we do pick up the text, and everything is fine through the end of the text. The only issue, again, is going to be when we take a look at what's here. We've got a total of 19 groups, doesn't match our 33. If the receiving station had challenged, we would have been able to work all of this out. Not only would we have been able to get the check correct, but then when we were comparing the check to the text, we would also find that some of the groups meant to be part of the text actually wound up in the address. And by that means, we would be able to get everything synchronized and to make sure that the text is correct. Moving on to the signature, we see the receiving radiogram doesn't have a signature at all. And this can be a real problem. As we see this message, it says to radiogram me, send me some information by radiogram, but we don't know who sent this message. The signature tells us who sent the message. The station of origin tells us the station at which this thought turned into a radio message, but it doesn't tell us who sent the message. So the signature is very important, and in fact, this message, as it arrives, is now incomplete to the point that somebody getting it doesn't know where to send the radiogram that they've been directed to send. Important for us to make sure we get that correct. And then again, I'll make the point about the accounting, making sure that we do get that recorded and that we have the ability to follow it. So what we see here is an example of a radiogram that was actually moved as part of our county information report project, and we can see how it actually worked in practice. It got the point across. It's a pretty good gist for what's there. The handling instructions, however, are garbled beyond recognition and are now giving different instructions to the radio operators. The check is such that we actually have two words, road work, got turned into one word, and so we don't really know that we have all of the message in there because the check doesn't match. And then, of course, the missing signature is a problem. So this is not going to be something that we are going to say is really getting the job done. It's a good place to start. This is a training exercise, and these kinds of mistakes are going to come up. I wanted to use this because this is a very good example of the sorts of mistakes that are common. We are all going to make them, so don't worry about it. Just recognize that it is a mistake and make sure that we don't repeat it. Also, again, when we're operating HF, when we have noisy conditions, that is going to be a time that we have to pay attention, that we're going to have to use our procedure, and we're really going to have to work hard sometimes to get these messages across. We can't just say, well, the band stinks. I'm sorry, Mr. EMA director, I can't really get your message through properly. Our job is to get the message through properly, word for word, letter for letter. It is somebody else's message. It's a person who works in the EMA who created that message. It's our job to make sure that it gets there the way that it was written. We can't interpret it and just try to get the idea across to somebody else. It's not our message. We don't have any editorial rights over that message once it's come into our station. So again, this is a good example. Common mistakes. Pay attention, especially when things get difficult, and you'll be a much more effective traffic handler and will be able to provide much greater service to our served agencies and also to the public who serve them. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, share this video with others, and I'll see you next time. Radio KD8TTE out.